If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
This is another of our popular Listener's Choice interviews, which we're playing over the weekend. We've chosen the most popular interviews for you to select the Listener's Choice winner. If you're not sure how the Listener's Choice competition works, have a look at horsechats.com/choice for the rules and the leaderboard. Today's guest is Dinah Fleming. Dinah's come from a dressage, show jumping and eventing background. She's also been a FEI 3-day event rider and is now a national dressage judge. How are you today, Dinah?
I'm good, thanks, Glenys. I'd like to just sort of welcome all your listeners as well.
Thank you. Dinah, normally we start the interview off with a favourite quote, which you could have as an inspirational quote or something that you use when you're teaching. What have you got for us today?
From my experience over my riding career, I tend to favour the quote that a young horse or green horse should always be ridden by an experienced rider. I've seen over the time very badly mismatched horse-rider combinations come through my yard and asking me to fix problems of horses that are actually rider-related because the rider isn't experienced enough to take on a young horse. And that is a real problem, and I don't think people understand the importance. With my own experience as a child, I had 2 very solid, good school horses to ride, and at 12 years of age, my mother gave me a pony that I had to train myself. And from there on in, I've always trained my own horses, and I've gone through many, many horses and trained them up to a high level of competition. But I think that for anyone out there that wants to take up riding or is an inexperienced rider, they really must find and to make riding enjoyable, they must find something that's not a green or young horse.
And obviously the couple of schoolmasters that you had early on really have put you in good stead then for going on and training your own horses.
Yeah, the best teacher for any rider is a trained horse.
Yep.
You can't beat it. It gives the rider a feel, it gives the rider a confidence, and the horse is forgiving. It makes up for your mistakes while you're learning, and it's not going to try and dump you or do anything nasty because it is a forgiving horse, and they are worth gold, those sort of horses.
Yep. Now, you said your mother got you a horse. Are you from a horsey family, or what are your first memories?
Yeah, well, I grew up on a wheat sheep farm in WA, quite a long way out of Perth. My mother was a breeder of Welsh Mountain and Australian ponies, and my father bred some thoroughbreds for racing. So my early memories horses were always around us all the time. So that was really how my first introduction to horses. And my first pony, which was a little schoolmaster, was a Shetland pony, and it was a real ripper. And its name was Gicky. And I remember as you say, first memory was I don't even know how old I was. I must have been tiny because the pony's tiny. I had to get a wooden chair to mount up on Gicky. And I rammed it into Gicky's tummy, and I got up and I was very pleased with myself because that's the first thing I can ever remember me doing on my own with a horse. And so you would imagine how small I would have been. I'm not a very tall person anyway, so I was very confident.
Yeah, no, that's lovely. The sort of thing that would be really cute to video, but probably you didn't get a video of it in those days.
I know. Yeah. No, there was nothing around in those days at all.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. So going on from there, because I think you said you're 11 when you got a horse to do some training. Did you do anything from school to be, did you go straight in and decide that you were going to become a coach and, going to be... What was?
I went on and I just sort of always had Dad's horses off the track. We would change into jumping horses or show horses or something like that as teenagers, take them to the Royal Show, win ribbons, or, champions and things like that. And Mum always said to us that we had to have a career financial background, and that the horses were secondary to our career. So I was like many, many young people having to juggle a career and also be a competition rider and train horses.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always cash and time poor, because you always want the best for your horse first before yourself.
Yes.
And that was really how I juggled my coaching. I coached on the weekends at Pony Club to help pay for my horses.
Mm-hmm.
I had my career, became a high school teacher, and then later on I worked in health. So I always had a career backing up so that I could actually provide for my horses, and I always had my horses on adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
it was a juggle.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
You know, I've heard stories where people take a year off and never go back to uni, or go to uni and never actually do what they meant, have a year off after uni and never actually go back, or people that have gone to uni and dropped out. And, you know, I think you always, if you've got horses, you always manage to find a way though, don't you? You know, you always make sure. Yeah, I think it's easier now because there is more opportunities for horse coaches around now. There wasn't really in the old days when we were coming through. That most of the people who rode most of them were pretty good riders, and then not a lot of people had coaching unless they came from overseas or somewhere like that. Or the national coach from Equestrian Australia came to visit WA. So there wasn't, unless you're in a riding school, there wasn't private coaching as such, or very much of that going on. Yes,
so
yes,
you really
yes.
Have
I think even without coaching, you know, I think that there's a lot more opportunities within the horse industry. That's what they, than they ever were.
Definitely.
And it doesn't mean that you have to leave school and go straight away and work in the local stables. There's a lot more, you know, and they're complementary industries where you need to have that horse background, horse knowledge, but you also might need to have a bit of study in other areas as well.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And I mean, that's sort of really instilled in us all the time. And but, you know, it was probably good. It was good in the way, because I don't think I would have been able to succeed as well as I did without actually having a job as well, financially anyway.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Now, if people are working in the horse industry, because people do, and they say, no, that's all I want to do, and they're quite happy to do that, what sort of skills or core skills or character traits do you think they need? And even yourself, who's had a career with horses, even though you've had you've had a full-time job and a part-time job, what do you think that you need to go on and be successful in the horse industry and to continue in the horse industry? Because it's a lifelong thing. You know, it's not just something that you do. Well, sometimes people do it for a sport for a year or two, but for people who are real professionals and real horse people, stay in it their whole lives. Yeah,
you have to learn from people you respect and people that treat horses well, and observe and never, ever say my way's better. I just try and be a sponge and absorb. And I can be critical in my thinking about whether or not I approve this way or that way, but I don't actually say it. If I'm working I used to work in stables before, and I worked in the UK for 6 months, and it was a really good experience because I would do things totally differently. But it doesn't mean to say that my way is better than their way. You do learn different ways of doing things. But I think understanding horse psychology is one of the biggest things that horse people need to learn, and it's something you can't get from a book. You can read it, you can go to a little weekend clinic or a week clinic, but only living and breathing with horses can you actually get the feel of understanding their psychology, and that is probably the most important thing, and I think that's the thing that's lacking in horse people today. Is trying to read, and it's reading body language of horses, and then there's a lot of signals they give off without doing anything. You know, you can tell what mood they're in. Yep. And you being a horse person, you'd understand that too.
Sure. Yeah, and I think you're right. I think you can read a bit in books. You can do a bit, but the more that you're with them, the more that you work them, the more that you train them, the more you interact with them, the more you learn.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
And I don't follow anyone's particular teachings either. I mean, I pick out bits from different people who I think, well, that was a good idea and that was a good idea. But I don't actually become a disciple of any one person, because not one person has that whole over educational knowledge of a horse. And training horses is the same, you know, when you're sitting on their backs, you know, you've got to pick ideas from lots of different people if you're having a training problem.
Yeah, yeah. And I think too, and people who've got a system and got an idea, they know that this system, doing it this way, is going to work with one horse, but it's not going to turn around and work with another horse. It's not going to work with the same, exactly using exactly the same aid, exactly the same signal.
Exactly.
It's not going to work every single time for every single horse. Yep.
You understand what I'm saying. Yeah, that's exactly what I mean.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Who's influenced you? You've talked about not having one system, but you've still picked up ideas from different people.
Yeah.
Who are those people?
Well, I would have to say the bulk of my horse knowledge was learnt from my mother.
Mm-hmm.
She was very young and went to live with my uncle in the country, her uncle, and he had Clydesdale horses and he still worked the farm. And so therefore my mother's still alive and she's well into her 90s now. She learnt a lot about horses, just handling horses with her uncle and, with the Clydesdales. And then when she got married, she went and trained, or every time Carl Juranek came to Australia, or he came to Australia, I think after World War II, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he's only just passed away, I believe, last year. He followed the German classical training system, and my mother was very much an advocate for that.
Mm-hmm.
And she used to go to his clinics, and she loved them, and she just said that this is the way she wants to train horses, and that's what she sort of instilled in us. And then later on, Franz Moringa used to come to WA as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mother used to go and sit and watch his lectures, and my two older sisters were allowed to attend because I was too young.
Okay.
They attended his clinics, and they were here, I think he was here for weeks on end.
Yeah.
And he followed the same riding and training principles as Kalman Juranek. So Mum was very happy. And I used to sit and listen to his lectures and just sort of was mind blowing, if you've ever listened to Franz Moringa, the knowledge that man had. He was before his time in WA, or in Australia, really. And she also, when we were kids, she used to sort of read Henry Wynne Malan and a lot of the old books and sit there and teach us from the book because there was no coaches. There was no, in the country, there's no coaches, there was no vets, and she had to actually get the Horace Hayes veterinary notes for horse owners for some of her veterinary treatments, which were pretty archaic now, but, most of them worked.
Yes.
But anything obviously more serious, we'd lose the horse. But, that would be Mum, I would say. And I thought of that hard, and I think she had the greatest influence in my knowledge about horses. Yeah.
But then the people that she studied from too, they've obviously had that influence that's come back through, like Carl and Franz and even reading.
Solid.
Yeah.
Solid background.
Yeah.
And, obviously that training is very I say it old-fashioned because people aren't patient enough anymore to want to train that way. They want to have the quick results. They want to use a lot of mechanical devices to round a horse up or engage a horse and things like that, whereas horses need time, like a human, any athlete, to develop muscular strength, suppleness and all of that, and it doesn't happen in just a year or 2 years.
I think you've got to have a bit of faith in humans. There are still people who are prepared to put the time and effort in, but I do see the change that there's quick results, someone promoting quick results. That's normally what people...
it's a society really, isn't it? Everyone wants everything quickly. They don't want to wait for anything.
Sometimes they say, right, well, I've tried the quick results way, now I'm ready, prepared to put the time and the effort and the work into it. Yep.
Right. And, I have a lot of, the students I do teach, I have students that leave me because I'm too slow in developing where they want to go. But the students that stay with me understand, and I have to keep on saying, you're not ready to go to that next level. You've got to get the groundwork done first, because if you don't have the groundwork, it'll show up at 2 levels above. The ones that don't like it, they leave, which they're right. They pay me for my advice, and the ones that want to stay, they get the benefit.
Yeah, and I think that's it. If they're getting the benefit and getting the long-term results, that's what you're looking at.
That's right.
Yeah. What about horses who've influenced you?
Well, they always say that you only ever in your lifetime have a handful of good horses. And not my first pony I trained, the second pony I trained. It was a very good little pony. He was half thoroughbred, half Welsh, I think. He was about nearly 14 hands. And he became a super little horse all-rounder. He became a Royal Show champion in the show ring. And he also went on and had a stellar career with the next rider after me.
Mm-hmm.
He was probably one of the first ones, and he was an absolute gem. Then I had another horse called Blue Poles, and he was actually born the same year as Gough Whitlam bought the Blue Poles painting.
Mm-hmm.
That's why his name.
Yep.
And we were selected to go to the Gawler 3-day event and represent WA in the teams competition. And unfortunately, because I was a school teacher, I applied for time off, and they said I would lose my position if I left.
It's not good.
And went. That was the era of the times. Employers didn't allow you to take time off for sport, whereas now they do it all the time. They let people off and think it's wonderful that they've got a person that's in their team, their staff team, that actually can do all these sporting achievements. So he ended up going really well in WA, but I didn't actually get to Gawler, and that was pretty gut-wrenching. And then probably my last eventing horse was, he and I represented Australia on 2 occasions in WA at 2 3-day events. It was the Narrogin 3-day event and the Narrogin, the Fairbridge 3-day event, and we were competing against 3 Asian teams, but the Asians were obviously on borrowed horses, and on both occasions the Australian team won, which was, I was lucky. I was in both the teams at both times.
Okay.
But we did have an advantage because we were riding our own horses.
Wait, can you hear anything? No? That's because we're waiting for someone with a good quality horse product to be advertised here. If that's you, then contact us, horsechats@horsechats.com, and we'll send you the details. Thanks.
Yeah, what about the horse you've got now, the one that you're, I think you're competing advanced training, Pre-St George?
Yeah, well, he's actually a dressage pony.
Okay.
And I bred him, and I've trained him up to that level now.
Yep.
It hasn't been easy because he's an actual crossbreed. He's a half thoroughbred, quarter thoroughbred, quarter Arabian, quarter warm blood, and quarter pony. So he's got a real mixture. And he has a little bit of an attitude, and he looks like a bit, I always call him the pit pony because he looks like he should be pulling a pit, being in the coal pits. But he's really coming to hand well, and he is developing into a nice one. He's about 14'2", just in that pony height size. And the other 2 warm bloods I've got, which are competing, one's working elementary, the other one's novice, and my goal will be to hopefully get them to the National Dressage Championships this year. Yeah.
Okay. What's been your proudest moment?
Well, I was a member of Pony Club in WA, and I actually rode for Australia in the Pony Club overseas competition in South Africa against 5 other nations. We were riding in Johannesburg in South Africa, and we were on borrowed horses, and we won the Internations team show jumping competition.
Oh, good.
And it was a course that looked very much like the Hickstead show jumping courses. It had a lot of undulating country, up and down, jumps on hills and going through water. And the fences were really quite high for a pony club because they were 1.30 metre, because we weren't just riding at pony club height, we were riding against all the other juniors in South Africa at the time. So it was quite a big testing course, and on borrowed horses, it was a real challenge. So that was probably one of them. The other highlight would be the representing Australia in those 2 3-day events in Narrogin and Fairbridge. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what's been your biggest challenge?
I've had some very difficult horses. I think when I had broken in horses, and I had one I broke in, and most of them I've broken in successfully, and this was obviously when I was younger, but this particular one I didn't feel confident about what was going on, and I had to admit that the horse had the better of me, and I wasn't prepared to push him through a barrier that I knew he had to go through. And rather than making excuses for his behaviour, I said, I need someone better to get on this horse. Than him. And I located a man that was a rodeo rider who didn't have any problem with a horse bucking or jumping sideways or doing whatever he might do. And he came up and spent 2 hours on the farm riding this horse, and the horse came back dripping wet, and he said, I've taken it through the dams, I've taken it all over the farm. And I got on that horse and I continued on its career, and it ended up jumping puissance.
Oh,
and
isn't that great? Yeah.
It was a sister, but I knew he'd met my challenge. I knew until that time.
Yep.
And you could have persevered with it.
Yeah.
But when you need help, you've got to take it.
Yes.
You know, you've really got to get someone.
Yeah, recognise it. Yep, recognise it and then do something about it. Yep.
Yeah, do something about it. And I couldn't believe just one ride would do that, because quite often it might take a longer time than that. But he put a stop saddle on.
Yep.
Because he knew the horse. I told him the horse was easy.
Yeah.
And, it came back and it was just a super horse. And I actually had to sell him to go overseas because I needed to fund my overseas trip. So I sold him to go overseas. Yeah.
Okay.
So that would probably be one of my biggest challenges. Yeah.
All right. Now, you're riding a few horses professionally now. You've got owners paying you to ride their horses. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I own one outright myself, and the other 3 are 2 are part-owned and one's fully owned by other people.
Tell me a bit about it, because people say, look, I'd love to ride more horses. I've got the time. I don't have the money to pay for it. You know, for lots of different reasons. They want someone to own the horse and pay for their riding or pay for the horse's expenses. But tell me a bit about riding for owners and what sort of responsibility it is.
I think, first of all, for an owner to select you as their rider, it's a great honour.
Yep.
It also means they trust you.
Yes.
They trust you with their horse, and they trust your judgment. And I have wonderful owners that do not interfere. We discuss the horse's plan and when it's going to compete and what it's going to do and at what level.
Yep.
And they never interfere. And I've never had one yet. And I've had these owners for several years, and they just say they trust my opinion. I don't put the horses in events that I don't think they are ready for. So we usually always come home with ribbons or success with the horses. I don't say, oh, well, this horse is ready to do medium when it's not really ready. And so the owners get a great pleasure out of that. But the trust is building a trust, and it is a hard thing to do. And I mean, it's not just your success, it's how you handle the horses, because they love their horses like we do, and you have to treat their horses like your own. So, it's a line of business that is available now, but it is a really good relationship you have to have with the owners.
Yep.
I have had one owner that always questioned my professionalism, and that one didn't work, and that might happen to me. I just had to say, I love the horse, but I had to let it go.
Yeah.
Because I was always being questioned, and I don't have to prove myself. I've proved myself to myself about what I can do and what I can achieve. And if they question your professionalism, then it's time for the horse to move on.
Yeah. I think that's a case, and I think that's not just a case with owners. You know, sometimes there's students who are better off with another coach, are better off with someone else.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And even if you've got staff in your yard that question the way you do things, that you move them on, because they can go and find out how rough it is out in someone else's stable.
Yes. All right. Now, you're a national dressage judge. What do you think is a common challenge that dressage riders have? You know, just something that you may have seen a bit more recently within your judging, and also how to fix it. You know, just something where people are just throwing away marks, or something that they're not doing in their training. Have you got something to say about that?
I think people do want to rush their horses up the grades, and although they may be doing a shoulder in, it's not really a shoulder in, it's a shoulder fall.
Yep.
And you have to mark them down, and the comments, whatever you say on your judge's sheet, you always know it's going to go back to the coach. And
as it should.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you're sending a message to their coach as well as to the rider that the horse needs more suppleness or more throughness or better lateral submission or whatever it is, because I get that on my sheets too. And so therefore I think there's a big gap between novice and elementary level in Australia, and people sort of go really well in novice, and all of a sudden they find, oh, shivers, I've got to do all this lateral work they've never practiced before. So I think people have to prepare themselves better. A lot of horses don't know how to stretch and don't know how to work over the back. And whether or not it's tension in an arena or in the show arena or the competition arena, or whether they're not practicing it at home, I don't know. But you often see the free walk on the long rein, horses don't know how to stretch, and you often see in the trot stretch circle, horses don't know how to stretch, and they're worth double marks. So
yes, the coefficient, that's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you've really got to work on those ones.
Yes.
And even if you do it really well at home, it's no guarantee you're going to do it well when you go out.
Yep.
But if you're training at home, you've got a better chance then of it succeeding when you go out. Yeah. So that would be my biggest tip of people, to really work on those things. Yeah.
Okay.
Accuracy is obviously an inexperienced rider.
Yes.
But the stretch trot circle and the free walk is really a training issue.
Yep. And it's not just the marks for that test and that level, because that's going to then have, as they sort of go up through the grades, it's going to come back again. You know, that's just giving them if the horse is not through at those movements and doesn't know how to work over the back, then it will get stuck in the high levels for sure. Yep.
Yeah.
If you're an equestrian coach or a horse riding instructor, or even if you aspire to be one, have a look at the free video series for horse riding instructors on the Horse Chats website. Go there now, have a look, horsechats.com.
All right then, now have you got a book that's been influential for you, one that you can recommend for our listeners?
I have, because I follow the German training system, I've got 2 books that I would probably recommend for people, and one is The Principles of Riding, which is the official handbook of the German Equestrian Federation.
Yep.
It's a really good section on the horse behaviour. It has a really good section on, well, the whole book is just great, but I'm just saying that, for the people who are just getting out on horse, how to care for your horse, equipment, how to fit equipment correctly, all of that stuff, which people tend not to know anymore, or they get different advice. And I just think that this book is really thorough in that area. And the other one is another German book. It's the Biomechanical Basics of Classical Riding by Dr. Thomas Ritter. Now, he is also German, and he focuses on the dressage training basically following the equine biomechanics. So conformation, if your horse has got a conformation problem, then you need to learn how to train it correctly to overcome that conformation problem. So therefore you can build the correct muscles in another area so it can be, sort of compensated.
Yep.
And I find that really good, because not all horses are built the same way, and you've got to look at the biomechanics of your horse and say, oh, okay, well, this one's really thick in the gullet and thick in the neck. I'm going to have to try and get the muscle underneath the neck soft and the crest built up and all of that sort of stuff. And that follows those principles.
Yep.
So they're 2 books I recommend, yeah.
Okay.
And remember, you can find all the books recommended by our guests at horsechats.com/books. You can have a look at the guest page for the individual book they recommended, or just look at the recommended books by order of popularity at horsechats.com/books.
All right. Now, what are you looking forward to at the moment? What does your future hold? You've talked about the horse that you're ready to go, or Prix St George, but is there what others? What else? Have you got students coming on?
I've got I've got a few students. I've got a couple that want to go competitive next year. I've kept them in participant this year, and 2018 they're going to start competitive. One's got a very nice big Friesian, purebred Friesian, which not many dressage horses are Friesian, but she's doing a super job. And she actually bought this horse from the Eastern States and had to do a lot of undoing because it had been, in my opinion, it had been blocked. So she's done a great job of that. And another girl who has starting her competitive season next year will be, she's on a nice little crossbred mare that's Pinto.
Okay.
But it's got some thoroughbred in it. And see, I'm not prejudiced about which horses I teach. I quite like the different breeds of horses that come through. And she will be competing in her competitive classes next year, maybe prelim or novice.
Okay.
So,
okay, good.
That 2 that jump to mind.
Yeah. All right. Now, how can people contact you?
Oh, my property is Knightwood Training Centre.
Mm-hmm.
I have a Facebook page, and I have my details on the Facebook page. I showcase my own horses there, but also showcase all my students on there, that all their successes and all their hardships. We share it all together.
Okay.
And that's sort of, because it's not all easy going. There's lots of bumps in the roads, and we share our bumps as well as our highlights. And that's really probably the best way. I don't have a website, but it's just a Facebook page.
Okay, and that Knightwood Training Centre is Knightwood with a Knight, isn't it? Yep.
All in one word, yeah.
We'll put those details on your page at horsechats.com/Dinah Fleming.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
Yeah, that's okay, Dinah. Look, really good talking to you today. I've enjoyed talking to you, you know, your early childhood, the early memories you would have had of France Maringa and, sort of going through to what you're doing now. It's been very good. Okay, thanks for talking to us today, and hope to talk to you again sometime soon.
Okay then.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Now, if you're still there, you probably know that I'm absolutely passionate about education within the horse industry. That's why I host this podcast. My other venture is Online Horse College. Have a look now at onlinehorsecollege.com, and I'll see you over there.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.